Welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for coming back on the show. I am talking about today about politics, about a young man who was assassinated. Um, this guy is Charlie Kirk. Cook. He is a prominent conservative. Shot at Utah Valley University on September 10, 2025. There's a lot of stuff to go over with this. Um, Charlie Kirk started Turning Point USA 2012. At the age of 18, he was inspired by the idea of traditional thoughts, traditional values, traditional aspects of life, and everything around it. Um, this young man basically decided to go out of his way to make a stance for the majority of Americans who did not have the opportunity to speak their minds anymore. You got to remember 2012 and 2010 and the early part of the 2000s. There's a very liberal aspect of life about different policies, different rules for different men and different women. They were pushing a lot of women's rights of going back to work and doing all the housework along with the work in the work field and being the prominent single mother aspect of it. And they also encouraged in that era of men to be very soft and weak and did not finish college, did not finish education, any aspects of that life. And it kind of turned into a backwards scene of what America used to be like. It used to be more like conservative, male and female would get married, have kids together at a very young age, raise them together, get old together, have grandkids, and etc. And generations would keep continually. When Charlie Kirk decided to do Turning Point USA, he wanted to bring that back to the ideology to America. And I think that a lot of people took his values for granted. And we as conservative people or people that believed in those ideas could not speak for ourselves. And when he did it, he made it very base value of just debating and free speech and an opportunity to give everyone an opportunity to argue or have an opinion, and then he would come back with his state of mind and what he thought. Now, I do think that his setup was a perfect setup for traditional debates. He brought back something that most people cannot do anymore at all without getting very angry, very frustrated. I think a lot of people who are opinionated are sometimes can be very objectively and not listen to the whole sentence or the whole objective thought and become very disturbed and very frustrated, and they don't listen to themselves as other people are speaking. So I think that's something that Charlie did very well, is that he was able to allow people to speak, to allow them to debate them, to allow them to think their thoughts, and then actually finishing his ideas. And yes, they would interrupt him here and there and so forth. But this is something that in America, freedom of speech, the First Amendment is always the most important. Is it because we are people who believe that there's no government, no institution, no other person in our own community or outside our community that can tell us that we can't say or do the things that we want to do. Now, obviously, there's some things that you should never do, heinous crimes against children or women or any of objection of killing people just because you're pissed off at someone's opinion, which clearly what's happened to Mr. Kirk. Unfortunately, a gunman decided to take the prominent in his own hand, and decided to end this guy's life. And it's something that a lot of people don't understand, that just because someone doesn't agree with you, it doesn't mean that you're wrong and they're wrong. It doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong. Okay. And I think that's something that most people don't understand how to departmentize that in their brain cells or their brain objections. So a lot of times people may have a different joke for the same uh, for the same audience, two jokes for one audience and and another same joke for another audience. Two different people are going to see it two different ways. So that doesn't mean that that joke is a good joke or a bad joke, or that debate of the ideology of what men and women should be is a good or bad thing. So that's something that most people can't departmentize at all. So one of the values that another value that Mr. Kirk value was that fact that he believed that women going back to work, women working over 40 hours a week, unable to take care of the household, and unable to settle down with a man because he's a conservative Christian, and raising the kids was technically a bad thing. Now, I would agree with you. I would agree with that idea if you're a Christian and if you have those values. Now, I will say this, that he does have a good point that they are encouraging more women to work and not raise kids. They're encouraging men not to help raise their kids and help their ex-spouse or their spouse. Most likely you want to be married to the same person that gave birth to your children, and you just work things out. And that's something that most people do not know how to do, is pick the right partner for life. And I think that that's very difficult to do. That's something that no one can actually ever figure it out for themselves. Either you have it or you don't. Either you find that person that you love, and then you raise your kids together, and then you work their issues and problems, and sometimes if that cheating and that type of stuff, you work things out. But a lot of times, Mr. Kirk had a problem with relating the idea because I feel like he did not have those type of struggles. He didn't have those type of ambitions and all that. He probably didn't care to be in other relationships with other women, even if he was that guy that was able to go on different dates with women and be married. Some guys cannot stay committed to the one wife that they have. And some women do not do that either. They do not stay committed to the husband that they have. Regardless if the husband is a good guy, and regardless of the woman, if the man is a good guy, and if the man is married to a woman and she's good, some people don't have that ability to stay commitment. And that's something that I think that he missed a little bit on that key point. The second thing I want to talk about is is the transgender policies. And a lot of times, as people in America, we do not understand people with trans who have genetic, I would say, not a disorder, but a identity issue with life. A lot of times that if something doesn't make sense to someone like me or like to Kirk, we just write them off and we go straight to the facts of science. It's not just science, but actually research. And there's not a clear data to identify if someone's born as a trans, someone actually is got a genetic disorder, a genetic gene that passes on to one person to the next as an offspring. There's no data that actually clearly says that that actually happens. Now, there's research that can empathize with the idea that maybe someone has a possibility of becoming or being a transgender. Scientists and doctors do believe people are not lying about wanting to be a a trans person. However, in America, if you disagree with somebody like that, you are shout out as a bigot. You are shout out as a hateful crime kind of guy. You are spoken as a person who is like, well, if you don't believe in my identity as a trans, you must hate people. And that's not what he was saying. He just did not agree with it. And the facts and the science at least held up to that point. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years or 10 years if they figured out what chromosome, what gene, what any of that, what happened. But if that does happen, then they can clearly change something or change the ideology of what that means. But a lot of what he was saying as he was talking about at at Utah Valley University, unfortunately, at the point when he's talking about transgender, that's when he was assassinated. So that's something that it kind of corresponds with it kind of corresponds with the idea of that's probably what one of those things that got him in a lot of trouble with society. But I still think that a lot of people don't understand that Mr. Kirk had the respect for people who were trans. Now, a lot of other people with the LGBTQ trans community probably disagreed. They probably thought that he was attacking them. And one of the people that I would tell you that got fired from his job as a journalist from NBC was Matthew Dowd. Now, Matthew Dowd is a journalist for that network, and one of the things that he said about Mr. Kirk as he was dying in a hospital is one of the most divine young figures who is constantly pushing the sort of hate speech aimed at certain groups. Certain groups, probably what he's talking about is the LGBTQ plus and the trans community. He goes along and says, hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which leads to hateful actions. And I think that the environment the environment that we are in. So whatever happened, he started. So he implied that he was constantly going after these transgender people and these LGBTQ plus people, and he was instigating these arguments and he was debating them. And I think that a lot of people, I think Kirk brought back debate in that area. Now, I think that Matthew Dowd, who said this stuff, he might be somewhat kind of correct because if you go around to all these universities and you know that there are going to be majority of the people there who are going to be there just to hear you say you don't like transgenders and you don't like the LGBTQ plus. And remember, this is what they are hearing in their own brains. Mr. Kirk may have never said that. He may have never said, I don't like transgenders. I don't like the gay community. He probably never said that. But in their brains, in those communities, that's what they hear. So that's something that you have to constantly remember, that when you have that objective and you only talk about that kind of thing, you're going to bring that type of energy and that type of perspective all the time. Now, I personally don't value why he got killed for those values, because if it's an opinion of what he thinks, then that's his opinion. So along with Matthew Dowd, he also, one last thing you guys and that I want to bring up from Matthew Dowd, that he said, you can't stop with the sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying that awful words and not expect awful actions to take place. Now, everyone has an opinion, and sometimes what I would tell you is that sometimes you just have to know when to cut it off, know when to, like, you won the battle, you won the war. But people wanted to hear Mr. Kirk speak because in universities in 2010s, they were talking so much about LGBTQ, uh, people should be gay, bisexual, uh, the freedom of experience sexually is everywhere. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I disagree with that or agree with that because I don't have to live that lifestyle. I don't, I'm not around those type of people where I have to hear that all the time. Okay. It's in universities, it's a box and it's a box of classes and kids who are very, uh, uh, they grab onto things and ideas and then they start following the wave and start and follow the perspective of that university. And I think that I don't consider it brainwashing, but I consider that if you encourage people to be super alternative, super different, super uh, so something that's not normal, then that becomes a problem. Now, I don't really have a problem with people who are part of the LGBTQ plus, but I do have a problem if they're always telling me that they think that everyone should be gay or everyone should try to be gay or everyone should be respect for trans and all that. If I don't want to hear it, then I'm not going to be around it. Okay, so I'm a bit confused. I'm a bit confused of why Mr. Kirk kept going to these universities and making these debates. And even though these conservative young people wanted him to go to the universities, you got to remember he's 31 or he was 31 and they're 18, 19 years old. So sometimes you're never going to change an 18-year-old child's brain cells at that age because he has not matured yet, where Mr. Kirk has matured. And you got to remember, sometimes people who are living an alternative lifestyle, they don't think of themselves as part of the community. And if they're not the alpha male, and that if they're not the good looking guy, and they're not the guy who are a ladies' man, and they're always left alone, and they're lonely and depressed, and play video games, they're going to look somewhere else for some action. And some of them will go to pages like the Only Fan page, where girls actually just take their clothes off and you pay them to watch them do it. And with the community of people who are not sure of who and what they are, they'll join a group of people that say, "Hey, since you don't know if you're male or female, you should join the transgender community." Maybe they do that, and they do that, and then "Hey, man, well, you should experiment having sex with men." And they're like, "Well, girls don't like me anyways, so I might as well try this." That can happen. That will happen. A lot of young people will do that. A lot of older people have done it in the 60s and the 70s. If they're not the alpha male, they'll go find something to do. Most of the time, those kids will not do LGBTQ stuff, but they'll do drugs. They'll take drugs. They'll take pills. They'll release their anxiety. They'll find other ways to release happiness or the dopamine aspect of life because they can't find someone to love. They can't find someone to have a good relationship. A lot of people just don't really believe in religion and don't believe in the American dream because it's not feasible to obtain it. Okay, uh, especially the American dream. You can't. You can go to college. You can get 2 college degrees. Your wife can get a college degree, and then you're always constantly working. And that doesn't work for a lot of people. And so why are they going to believe in the conservative lifestyle? Now, Mr. Kirk and Ben Shapiro, uh, who is a Jewish man, uh, they are very well educated, and they believe in being that conservative Judaism Christian aspect of it. They believe in getting married. They believe in having kids. They believe in having a nice house with a picket white fence because they can obtain it. But most people cannot obtain it. So most people grab onto the next thing. And the next thing was in 2010s was what? This super objective LGBTQ trans group of people. And it worked for them. And now these people are upset because you get a Christian who's telling them that they're wrong all the time. No one wants to hear about being wrong all the time. And it's unfortunate that this young man had to go through this part of his life and not grow old and not watch his kids uh, grow up and have kids. His wife is devastated. His kids are going to be raised without a father, and which is ironic. This is what he was talking about. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to his kids. And I think the lesson to hear about this is that sometimes it's okay to just be quiet. Sometimes you're just not going to convince people, regardless of their point of view. And like, I tell you the truth, Ben Shapiro, sometimes he says a lot of stuff about the Black community situation. And he might be right. But you know what? You don't see him a lot anymore. Probably because he got the memo that people got sick of him bashing Black folks. And the Black community knew or knows that they have a problem. They just don't know how to fix it. And for Kirk, Mr. Kirk, someone should have told him, like, I'm surprised that if this comes out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the investigation that there was not an incessant death threat on Mr. Kirk, I'd be surprised because he must have had a couple of death threats along the way. And if you don't hear, if your people are not telling you the truth about the death threats, then your community or your group of people are not good people. But if they're telling you that there's death threats to you in Utah or wherever school he was going to go to next or a couple of years ago or whatever, I mean, you just have to know your space. And unfortunately, this has happened again. We had a couple other stuff going on. We had the president of the United States when he was running for his term, almost fatally shot in the ear. But people are not well thought of people. People are frustrated. The social class or the social classes are clashing because there's too many poor people who are not succeeding in life and their own happiness. They can't afford generic stuff. They cannot afford going on vacations, having a good time, relaxing, not worrying about work and the bills. The social class is collapsing. And to be honest with you, it's pretty sad. So, folks, I'd like to thank you for coming along to the show. If you liked this episode, follow me on the Crazy Dre Podcast Show. Find me on YouTube, the Patreon. You can find me on anywhere you download your podcast. Peace and love. And I hope people really just sit back and just just observe their energy better. Understand everything is temporary. And a person dying over his point of view and his objectives are not worth death sentence. It just isn't. So it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican. We're all Americans. We're all human beings. Let's find a better way to communicate without getting all berserk. Okay? Peace, love, and I'm out of here.